With Beverly Hills Cop 4 coming out this week on Netflix, I thought I'd take a look at a number one hit song that appeared in the series. This song gave legendary rock musician their first number one hit nearly a decade after their breakout album came out, and during a period when they didn't have a top 10 hit for at least the last 5 years. Stay tuned for the full story. Bob Seger has had many hits throughout his career, including Night Moves, Turn the Page, Old Time Rock and Roll, We've Got Tonight, Against the Wind, and today's topic, Shakedown. But Shakedown wasn't initially written for Seger, and he only got offered the song because the musician it was written for came down with an illness. At least that's what he claimed. It would end up being Bob Seger's only number one hit of his career on the Hot 100 chart, coming over 2 decades after he started playing music. It's regarded by some of his longtime fans, as Baba Booey would say, a bit of a stumble. In case you guys are wondering, I have actually talked about Bob Seger previously on my channel when I discussed the controversy surrounding Metallica's video for their cover of the song Turn the Page. The link is down below. Born in Detroit to a working class family, he'd grown up in nearby Ann Arbor. He would start to play music in high school. He'd be influenced by James Brown, Little Richard, the Beatles, and Elvis. He'd played through a variety of acts in the 60s, including Bob Seger and the Last Heard, and then the Bob Seger System, in addition to writing and producing for other groups, including fellow Detroit native Glenn Frey's pre-Eagles band, The Mushrooms. By the early 70s, he simply went by Bob Seger and soon started a solo career. But by the middle of the decade, he put together the Silver Bullet Band using musicians from Detroit. It was during this part of the career he went from being a regional act to achieving fame nationally when he released 2 albums in 1976. First, the live record Live Bullet, and later in the year, the 6-times platinum album Night Moves. Between 1976 and 1980, Seger would release 2 more records that cumulatively sold 11 million copies. Seger also had a string of top 10 hits from 1976 to 1982, with 1982's Shame on the Moon being the highest charting of his career, peaking at number 2 on the Hot 100 chart. In the subsequent years, Seger would still come up in pop culture with his single Old Time Rock and Roll, being featured prominently in Tom Cruise's movie Risky Business in 1983. Seger would release 2 more platinum records in 1983 and 1986, but they failed to achieve as much commercial success as his previous efforts. In 1984, the first Beverly Hills Cop movie would come out, and it would star 1980s superstar and SNL alumni Eddie Murphy. Murphy plays Detroit detective Axel Foley as he heads out to the West Coast to Beverly Hills to solve the murder of a close friend. Murphy, interestingly enough, wasn't the first choice to play Axel Foley, as Sylvester Stallone was originally considered to play the role, and he even rewrote the script to remove all the comedic elements from the movie. The film would prove to be an enormous success, and Beverly Hills Cop's soundtrack would top the charts as well, and featured several top 10 hits, including the instrumental theme simply titled Axel F, as well as Glenn Frey's The Heat Is On, which would peak at number 2. 2 years later, the sequel, aptly titled Beverly Hills Cop II, would arrive, and Harold Faltermeyer, who composed the inescapable Axel F theme, was brought back to work on the film's soundtrack, and he would work with Keith Forsey on a song called Shakedown. Since Glenn Frey had a number 2 hit with The Heat Is On, he was originally offered the song, but he wasn't a fan of the lyrics, and the week he was supposed to record the song, he came down with laryngitis. At least that's what's been reported. It would be former Eagles manager and then MCA Records head Irving Asoff who placed a call to Bob Seger to do the song. Seger wanted to rewrite part of the lyrics, recalling in the Billboard Book of Number 1 Hits, "There were a lot of lyrics about working undercover. I didn't like them, so I threw them all out. I decided to write it my way, and they trusted my judgment." Seger would keep the chorus intact though, and he would also receive a writing credit on the song. Relying heavily on synthesizers as well as a dance beat, it wasn't what longtime fans of Bob Seger had grown accustomed to. But the charts told a different story. Released in May of 1987, the song would eventually top the Hot 100 chart on August 1st of that year, giving Seger his first and only number 1 hit of his career on the Hot 100 chart. Shakedown would also get an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song, but it would lose out to Dirty Dancing's The Time of My Life. Since 1987, Seger wouldn't have another top 10 single, but his 1986 tune Like a Rock would be adopted by Chevrolet in the subsequent decade. Meanwhile, his song Turn the Page would be covered by Metallica in 1998, and it would be a #1 hit for the band on the rock charts in America. As for Beverly Hills Cop II, the movie was another box office success, becoming the third highest grossing picture of 1987, only trailing Three Men and a Baby and Fatal Attraction, while the soundtrack was a top 10 hit. As for how Glenn Frey felt about giving up a #1 song, he would call to congratulate his friend, revealing, "At least we kept the money in Michigan." Seger would release his greatest hits album in 1994, but wouldn't include Shakedown, not feeling it was the best representation of his career. However, it would be included in his second greatest hits album that came out in 2003. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories.